Hey listeners, Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. I get the privilege of working alongside all of the creators at Enrollify, but I wanted to take just a quick moment to tell you about why I love the application, the podcast hosted by Allison Tercio, AVP for Enrollment and Marketing at Siena College. The application is your playbook for the ever-evolving world of higher ed enrollment marketing. This podcast zeroes in on the niche, often unexplored areas of the field, delivering a potent mix of actionable insights, practical strategies, and cutting-edge perspectives. Some of my favorite episodes are on topics like activating your school's student influencers, mastering the student inquiry moment, and even a roadmap to web accessibility. Allison cuts to the chase and keeps you entertained in these short 30-minute episodes that drop every other Tuesday. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search the application wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to I Want to Work There, a podcast that helps colleges and universities boost their brands as employers of choice. I'm your host, Eddie Francis, brand strategy consultant for Edify Ventures. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the best minds in talent recruitment and retention, human resources, and marketing and communications inside and outside of higher education. I Want to Work There is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals just like you grow, and explore our other shows at enrollify.org, or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of I Want to Work There. Joining me is Jennifer Askey. She is an academic leadership coach. And Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. How are you?
I am doing super well today. Thanks, Eddie. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, I'm glad to have you because it's been great getting to know you. It's been great getting to know your work. I think the work that you do is really fascinating. And for the purposes of really understanding talent experience and the importance of talent experience for an institution forming a competitive and a compelling and an attractive employer brand, I think it's very important to understand some of the key people in academia, and that would be faculty. And you work a lot with faculty as a coach. So first things first, you guide academics towards greater fulfillment and success. But how did you get started on that journey? What made you want to help them get fulfilled and successful?
Shortly after I got tenure at a land grant institution in the United States, my husband was offered a career opportunity in Canada that we could not pass up. And I had tenure, but I was not maybe 100% passionate about teaching German language for the rest of my career. And I maybe wasn't 100% passionate about writing about 19th century German literature, which was my area of specialty. And I sensed that there were other things I could do in the world, in the academic world. And I was willing to find out what those things were. So I left my job and we moved to Canada. And after my first two institutional positions in Canada, so I was a staff, like a special assistant to the dean in one, and I was a temporary full-time faculty in another, I knew I needed a career and not a series of gigs, which was sort of what I was putting together. And someone I knew was a coach, and she said, you should work with a coach. So I worked with a coach at the university I was working at. And then later on, I worked with my friend. And both of these people, we did assessments, we did lots of discussions about what I liked to do and what I was good at and what I cared about. Both of those coaching engagements, they kind of pointed me in the direction of coaching and said, you should look at this, not because coaching is a pyramid scheme, but because all of the conversations and assessments and whatnot that I did with them showcased how attuned I was to my own story and to other people's stories. And I was trained as a literary scholar. And so being able to listen to the meaning below the surface, to get at the significance of something, serves me really well in listening to my clients' stories and getting at the significance of what they want. So I get to do that meaning making stuff that I really loved in literature, but I get to do it with people, which excites me a little bit more than doing it in books and writing articles that, 12 people are going to read.
Is that something that you find to be a typical struggle among faculty, that they have to figure out a way to reconnect with themselves in order to get some sort of fulfillment out of their journey at their particular institutions?
I do. I tend to, if I wanted to group them into two or three categories, one category is very much like I was a great student. I really loved being a great student, so I went to grad school, and that was fun. I really liked doing the thing, whether it was being in a lab or being in an archive. It was fun. So I kept doing it, and I did well. And then I got an academic job. Maybe I lucked out and got an academic job because they're kind of hard to get. And now I'm here, and the job is very different from being a great student, and maybe
Mm,
it doesn't sit so well. So, how do I take that thing that was fun and exciting and let me do something that I felt really good at? And higher ed is changing, right? We read about it all the time. COVID revealed some fractures in what we thought was sort of the contract between faculty and their institutions when it came to values. And so a lot of people kind of fall into academia because they were good at things. And then when something happens, whether it's a leadership opportunity or maybe they've grabbed all the brass rings there are to be grabbed. Like I have a couple clients who are full professors, and they say things like, well, if the next 10 years look like the last 10 years, it's kind of boring. And yeah, you can always pick your projects but it's hard to pivot, even if you're pivoting a research area, right? And so that notion of like getting in touch with your value systems and how you want your work to feel and how you want to feel at work is one of the core pillars of coaching. And then if it's something like a leadership opportunity or a leadership task, a lot of
mhm.
people in academia wind up as like department chairs or directors because it's their turn, not because they were like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And so if you're reluctantly put into a leadership position, then figuring out, okay, how am I going to do this well?
Yeah.
Um, what does it mean to do it well in my particular context? What kind of help do I need? What does it mean to lead my peers? Is this a temporary thing, or is this the first step in a new trajectory into administration? Um, yeah, so I mean, academia is a hard path, but it tends to be a pretty well laid out path. So if you're making stops along that path and have the opportunity to look around and say, okay, do I like where I'm at? Is this where I thought I was headed?
Hmm. So this begs the question. I want to look in the other direction. What do you find in your average case do fulfillment and success look like? Or is that something that you find out the faculty have to figure out how to define for themselves?
Both,
Okay.
because, and okay, sort of the quick and dirty version of fulfillment that kind of is in the back of my mind all the time is you want to be in the place where the Venn diagram overlaps, where the institution you're at, its mission and vision and values, what it considers to be successful, right? So you are successful when you do or have these things. And your discipline's notion of success, right?
Mhm.
When it comes to what you teach and what you research and all of that, and your own definition of success. Like, I feel good at work. I'm in the right place doing the right thing with the right people. Like, you want to be at that spot where all of those three things overlap. So you can do the things you love, be recognized and acknowledged for doing the things you love, and it benefits everybody. That's kind of the unicorn utopian version
Yeah.
of complete fulfillment. And it might be entirely utopian, but making choices and sort of tacking your ship your sailboat in that direction is part of what we try to do in coaching. Because
You know,
when you find
mhm,
out that, like, okay, here's me and here's my institution, and I'm discovering at this stage in my career, maybe there's been a big administrative change or
mhm.
demographic changes or disciplinary changes, that where you feel that you get to, be in the right place, doing the right things with the right people, and what is expected from you, when those begin to diverge and you have like an enormous values conflict with your institution or with your discipline, that's when fulfillment gets really, really hard,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
it's hard to feel happy at work when you are in values conflict with everything around you. So knowing where you overlap with your institution and your discipline and your colleagues, like, that's really important.
That makes me think about conversations I've had with colleagues at different institutions, especially when it comes down to job searches. And they would say, we got this search committee. We're looking at this person as a potential faculty member, tenure track, or we're looking at this person to be a dean. And they'll say, oh, but the talent pool is really rough. And so now we're down to our last couple of candidates. We're not exactly sure. And they sound really unsure about the decision. And I'm the one with my talent acquisition background who comes in and says, you might have to just fail the search until you find the right person for your institution. And nobody likes to hear that. Everybody hates that because they got to fill this position. And I understand that struggle. And it really makes me think about how colleges and universities have to be really intentional in these searches, and they have to be very intentional about who they bring on board, especially in faculty positions, because faculty are they wind up being the face and the voice of the institution, no matter what they're teaching. And so it really makes me think about the responsibility an institution has, and how they would do someone a disservice if they hire them because they just happen to be the last one standing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, thinking about that, the job search and finding the right candidate, when it comes to faculty hires, faculty are rewarded and promoted differently than staff,
Right.
right? Like, it's at most institutions, it's going to be your research record, followed by your teaching record, followed by your service record. At teaching centered institutions, that might flip, right?
Hmm.
But um, your disciplinary expertise, your subject matter expertise, is what gets you further and further up the ladder in your career. And then if you move into administration and you're going to be director or head or chair or dean or whatever, an entirely different set of skills is called upon, right? So just because you are an amazeballs chemist or an excellent teacher of literature, um, does not mean that you are a good leader of people. It does not mean that you have even sort of tapped into what it means to be an organizational leader, as opposed to sort of maybe the independent contractor model of faculty, right? So that pivot into deliberate leadership, as opposed to like accidental leadership or something, means that you're, in my estimation, I think a successful academic leader is somebody who's thought really clearly about what it means to have a voice, what it means to lead a unit, lead a team, lead a discipline, lead an institution, what they stand for, like all of those things. And how they, like, if you're going to be a dean, if you're going to be a chair, how are you going to manage people? How are you going to manage staff who are untenured staff? How are you going to manage tenured faculty members? You can't fire people, right?
And you can't keep them around and kick them around all the time either.
Exactly. So managing and leading in higher education is super, super challenging,
Yeah.
because you have two completely different classes of employees. And
Mhm.
faculty are people that, once they have tenure, they tend to stay around. And so, how do you motivate those people? How do you reward those people? How do you lead them? How do you manage them if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing?
Mhm.
Right? Like, it is a, ooh, it's a sticky, sticky, sticky place to be. And yeah, so just bringing in a human being with an amazing research record, great. What does that say about who they are when they're under stress. Who are they when the fur hits the fan?
Mm. You're listening to I Want to Work There. I'm Eddie Francis. We're talking to Jennifer Askey. She's an academic leadership coach. And with that being said, what do faculty want from their employers so that they can gain this sense of satisfaction from their work experience?
The short answer to that is they want support.
Okay.
Um, and the easiest, like should be falling off a log easy version of support is acknowledgement and recognition. If you think about the academic work environment for faculty, where excellence is kind of the lowest possible bar to clear, right? Excellence is just expected, and then
Mm,
you're supposed to be superlative above and beyond that. Most institutions will recognize and applaud their superstars, maybe even put together retention packages to keep a name, right, that you want to
mm-hmm.
keep. And then hundreds and hundreds of faculty and staff who actually keep the ship afloat tend to get very little public or private recognition, right? So these are the people who supposedly do it because they love their work or they love the students or they care. And so the disparity between celebrating, one or two big names and rank and file are treated like resources. That tends to be a narrative I hear a lot. And so support looks like, to me, like recognizing what academic labor looks like. There's a lot of emotional labor, there's a lot of invisible knowledge labor, and there's a lot of filing the paperwork, submitting the grades, dealing with the discontented students. Especially post pandemic, we see so many, I see, and I've read about so many faculty who are the point of first disclosure for students' emotional and physical difficulties. And the university doesn't have, generally speaking, enough supports for those students. And that leaves a lot of faculty feeling like, well, not only do I have to be doing my research, teaching my classes, but I have to have this amazing emotional capacity for my students. And
Yeah.
that's a lot. And that's before, the 17 committees I'm on. So recognizing the breadth of academic labor and applauding people who are doing it would be, I think, a big shift in the way a lot of faculty experience the jobs. Then on top of that, there's the notion that the more faculty feel like the work of teaching and research is purely a numbers game is incredibly demotivating.
And for me, as someone who has been on the business operations side, one of the things that I had to learn how to do is I had to learn how to build emotional intelligence in order to understand faculty because I did not get it at first. I mean, I was the goofy PR slash comms person who would go to a faculty person and say, "Hey, we need you to help uplift the brand of the institution. So here's what we're gonna do." And I did not, and I thought I was going to them with something wonderful and something fun and cool, and yeah, we're gonna do this press release on you, and you're gonna love it. All we need you to do is show up at the TV station in about an hour and a half. And so, and I didn't realize that I was traumatizing the daylights out of people whenever I would approach them that way. And it was so funny when I finally understood the dynamic between the business operations side of the university and the faculty side or the academic side of the university. That's when I learned to approach faculty and say, okay, hey, listen, there's this thing. I need to know how you feel about it. Here are the benefits of it. Here are the drawbacks to it. But if you do it, I would love you forever. And and if you can't do it, I completely understand.
And can
I
you give
will,
me another name, please?
is there somebody who you think
Yeah.
would be better for this whole thing? But I did learn that what really worked was to go to faculty and say thank you, like thanking them profusely went a long way. And then since I had control of things like the homepage of the website, just throwing them a bone, just getting them on the homepage of the website, highlighting a news story about them that wasn't a goofy brand friendly press release, but it was a genuine news story about their work and what they were doing. And it really made them look human and fun. And if I made them look fun, they were fine with that. But it took a lot, Jennifer. I mean, I was the goofy Marcom guy running up on people going, "Hey, we got this brand initiative and I need you to be a part of it."
Well, and what that whole story pushes up against, I mean, when you say the business operations side of the university, there's a certain percentage of faculty where their hair begins to stand on end. Like, just talking about the university as a business is just a
Oh, they
no-go
hate
zone.
that. Yeah, I know. I know.
Because, well, and I mean, when I was preparing for this podcast and thinking about, various things we might be talking about, it's like, the faculty at your local institution, they actually believe that higher education is a public good
Yeah,
and not a business.
absolutely.
And the more it starts looking like a business, which it is, because I mean, public funding has
Yeah.
nosedived. So where's the money going to come from?
Well,
So the
and
more
you
it,
don't have a bunch of families walking around with $80,000 to spend per year out of
holy
pocket.
Holy cats. No, you don't, right? Like, that's just nuts. So where is the money going to come from? How are we going to make this a legitimate nonprofit venture? That's a values conflict for a lot of people. And I used to have a joke with friends, every time somebody talks about the neoliberal university, you have to take a drink. But the corporatization of the university is here, and that is a done deal on the business operations side of the university. And how that plays out on the faculty side like differs from institution to institution, and that's where the conflict happens. So when you say, help me brand the institution, the faculty members like, what
Yeah.
brand? I'll do.
Yes. I know.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, you and your parlor tricks. Is that what we're gonna do right now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You think I'm a marketing shtick, buddy? I'm a philosopher. I'm not a marketing shtick. Right? And faculty really, they feel, many of them feel like their commitment to education as a public good, their commitment to basic science, to critical thinking, like all of that is like the moral compass of the institution. And so when the institution operates like a business, it's like, well, where does the moral compass and the financial resiliency of the institution, where can they touch and overlap?
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news! I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times bestselling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
Doesn't this really highlight the fact that in order to have an institution that runs well, I mean, you're talking on the business side and both the academic side, or so that we all operate in the public good, because there are a lot of us on the business side. We perfectly understand very well the public good aspect of what we're doing, but doesn't it really highlight the fact that when it comes to the people who are in leadership positions, how multidimensional they have to be in their thinking and how highly skilled they have to be as far as being people leaders. They can't lead processes, they can't lead data, they got to lead people.
Amen. Absolutely. And when you say processes, that generates a whole line of thinking with me. Like, I tell people, well, my last institutional job in administration, we would run into issues and somebody would say, well, let's go check the policy. Let's go look at the handbook. And yes, the policies are there for fair and equitable treatment. Love that. But we do not policy our way out of problems. We people our way out of problems, right? It's people. The emotionally intelligent leader is self-aware and can self-manage and can read the room and can manage relationships. And that's a lot to be juggling. And you've gotten that parallel to, or in addition to, the subject matter expertise that got you in the door.
You're listening to I Want to Work There. I'm Eddie Francis. We're talking to Jennifer Askey. She is an academic leadership coach. And so, with that being said, you coach faculty, and as you coach them, what are some of the things that when you coach them, you talk to them about so that they can control, so that they can achieve at least some level of job satisfaction and at least some satisfactory level of success, so that when they walk away, they're going, okay, I did okay, and the institution was what it was, but I did okay.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for that question, because that really is sort of the core of coaching. So we can't control other people's thoughts, opinions, actions, and we can't expect to allow our happiness to depend on the actions of others, even if they would be totally reasonable actions. Like, I don't want to peg my own happiness to how so and so behaves, because that's a losing game. So in coaching, we ask, what can you do? What's in your control to make you feel better at work? And so the process of coaching is about recognizing the choices that you have and making those choices consciously rather than on default. Because even if you're making uncomfortable choices, even if you're making trade-offs, if you're doing them consciously, you are more content with your life, right? So I take most of my clients through a process where we look at where they are now and focus in on what's working. So what are you doing? What's going on when things are in flow? You're in the right place, doing the right work at the right time. And this will get at some of their values and some of the skills they want to use. And then we'll look at, well, okay, what does the institution require of you? And not just the bean counting stuff, but where is what you're doing when you're in flow overlapping with what the university's goals are? So we look at that convergence of the Venn diagram and the gap. And then we look at, where do you have choice? Can you do more of what makes you feel good? Can you do less of what you don't? And that sounds like such a simple thing, but people are always amazed at how little time they spend being intentional about doing things that they like and that get them rewarded.
Well, especially when the stakes are high for someone. Like if someone is on the tenure track, the stakes are very high.
Yeah. But people operate on autopilot.
Yeah.
Even when the stakes are high, we tend to operate on autopilot. So notice, like, people who feel like the stakes are high, the schedule's packed, the burden is huge, and you ask simple questions like, okay, what's your week look like? And they start talking to you about email. I'm like, listen, nobody got tenure for email, buddy. Beautifully crafted emails delivered on time are not what gets you tenure. Now, they do make you a nice colleague, but like, if you start every day with the high anxiety work of going through your email inbox and figuring out what's on fire, how's that going to make you feel? That's a choice you can make. Like, what if you started your day slightly differently? And that seems really simple. It's a tiny little intervention that points in the direction of other interventions. And so one of the things I really like people to focus on is, okay, if you want to feel this way at work, what are 2 or 3 strategic outcomes that are going to help you get there? And then we look at the choices you make to move in the direction of those outcomes. You have to prep for classes. Great. You don't need to spend 4 hours per hour lecture. You're going to have to pare that down. But it won't be perfect. Yes, it will be fine.
I was going to say, that must sound like torture to some people, though.
It does. But we have to make conscious choices and trade-offs, and it is hard to do that. And so having a coach who has a lot of experience with academia and it's not my job to tell people what to do, but right, you hold up kind of a unique mirror and say, okay, this is what I see you doing. Is that what you want to be doing? Does that overlap with what you say your goals are? Does that overlap with what you say your values are? How much of what you're doing is just happening on default? and how much of it is really intentional. And that's where, emotional intelligence comes in. How self-aware are you?
So we are involved, you and I and some other colleagues are involved in this very cool effort, a free effort called Cultivating Campus Culture. What is it and why? Because you are very passionate about this thing. I mean, you reached out to me and
I did.
you're just like
Well, I heard you
you.
talk to people on your podcast. I was like, oh my gosh, Eddie gets it.
Oh, that's good to
Universities
know.
are
Thank
challenging
you.
places
I
to
feel
work.
good. I feel better now.
No, you get it. Like, universities are weird places to work. And there is an epidemic of dissatisfaction on the
Yeah.
part of faculty and staff at institutions all over North America. I read
Which
about it, I see it.
and people, I think people's fears about that is that administrations are flat out ignoring it. Like
Yeah,
that is the perception that a
yeah,
lot of us have. And I know that there are a lot of administrations and so many presidents and chancellors who are paying attention and they do want to do better. But we can't shake this idea that they don't get it. We can't shake this idea that they're not doing anything about it. So
yeah.
cultivating campus culture, what kind of fun are we going to be having?
Okay, so I reached out to you and Kevin McClure and Rebecca Pope Ruark and some other people who are publicly. So Rebecca's written a book on burnout in faculty. She runs an organization called, her business is called the Agile Faculty, I believe. It'll be in the show notes, though, I promise. There's you with I Want to Work There. There's Kevin McClure with his book project on the Caring University. So there are a group of people, and hopefully a growing group of people, who are looking at the employee experience at higher education institutions. And I see it on this really intimate one-on-one basis when people come to me. And you guys have a bigger view of this and are talking to a bunch of people about it. And I looked around and said, well, where do these people meet? And we don't. So I thought maybe we should come together. And so in creating campus culture, we're going to talk about over 4 Tuesdays. We're going to talk about talent issues in academia. What does it mean to attract and retain talent? What does it mean to lead people? What does it mean to be an employer of choice? This is where you come in. We're going to talk about problems with and for being a leader in academia, some of the things that we talked about today. Then we're going to talk about wellness problems. And you and I both know, and your listeners know, that universities and colleges pay a lot of attention to the student experience. And we pay a lot of attention to student mental health crises. And we're really aware post-COVID and during COVID how dire the student wellness situation on a lot of campuses is.
Mhm.
Students are not going to have a great experience if faculty are burned out messes.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to look at employee wellness? What does it mean to look at faculty wellness, right? So bringing people in, leading them, and helping them, creating structures for them to be well at work, to be resilient at work. And then the fourth session is hopefully a lovely opportunity to talk about, what's worked, what might come next. And for those of us who are engaged in this conversation, what might we want to create in terms of a forum or an ongoing discussion or talking about campus culture is from the professional side of being a faculty or staff member.
And what I love about this is that we are very much on a track of it being a both and conversation. You can have a great experience individually, and you can have an institution that meets you halfway on this stuff. And there is a way to advocate for yourself so
Absolutely.
that the institution gives you the kind of experience you deserve, while the institution also is able to brand themselves as a great employer. It can all happen at the
Absolutely.
same
Exactly.
time.
This should be sort of the rising tide lifting all boats, because if the faculty feel supported and recognized, if the staff feel supported and recognized, then when the students come in, they're coming into an environment where support and recognition are the name of the game,
Mhm.
right? And because like when you approach that faculty member saying, help me with my branding initiative, or the student approaches the faculty member with, grandma actually did pass away and I actually do need an extension.
Yeah.
If you have a faculty member who's had it up to here with conflicting demands and an 80-hour work week, like they're not going to respond well. The staff member who's being barked at all day long isn't going to respond well. Right? So how do we create how do we take some of the things that corporate America is good at when it comes to being intentional about culture and bring them into the university so that we can be intentional about our people's strategy?
Jennifer, I'm going to pretend you didn't say corporate America in this faculty-oriented interview, but that's fine. That's okay. You're forgiven.
Oh
So,
man, I know a couple people who are really smart when it comes to these things, and I've read some really great books from people who are really smart about these things. And I think, oh look, and some of them are even written by academics. Like, oh, the knowledge is there. Let's bring it in. Let's bring it into the university. But yeah, I did say corporate America. I'm sorry.
so I always like to ask my guests about the way forward. And what I'm going to give you the opportunity to do, Jennifer, is to play sage on the stage here. So you have this opportunity to talk to a group of administrators. You have this opportunity to talk to let's even throw in some board members here. What would you say colleges and universities can do to provide their faculty with a satisfactory work experience? First steps.
First steps. I think that the institution that actually lives the values that show up in their mission and vision statement and lives those values through their decision making and prioritization is doing a good job. And I think there are a lot of institutions that, for whatever reasons, financial, enrollment, whatever pressure, political pressures in the states right now in public institutions, find themselves making decisions or allowing decisions to be made that actually go counter to what they say is important.
Yeah.
And I think if you're serving in that leadership capacity, that look inward to what's at stake for me here as a human being, which of my values are in play here, how do I lead and help prioritize, not just based on policy and not just based on pressure, but based on values. And to what extent do those values include the people who teach and learn at your institution? Like really coming back to that fundamental, like, are we doing harm here? Who are we serving here? Are we serving our faculty? Are we serving our staff? Are we serving our students? Are we playing those three sets of people off against each other? Like, oh, provide for the students. These two groups have to suffer. Right? So really look, like if you say you care about creating a better world, if you care about critical thinking, if you care about, providing opportunities, like is that equal across the board? And I acknowledge that it is a hard position to be in right now, right? Because of political pressures, because of budget and funding cuts, because of what is going on after the pandemic. And like I see all sorts of new things bubbling up around, oh yeah, we don't need to send our kids to college. You can get by without a degree. And like that's got to strike fear in the hearts of people. So if we're about people learning and teaching, are people center in your decision making? Because your mission statement probably says they are in some fashion, but pressures, like when the fur hits the fan, do we make decisions that run counter to what we espouse? And so I would go back to basics a little bit there, and also invite leaders to be bold, because if you're leading and you feel like I need to keep this job because XYZ, pay the bills, right? If you're leading out of fear, that's a hard place to wake up every morning, right? And you're not going to be making decisions that you're happy with in the long run. So what does it mean to lead from hope? What does it mean to lead from values? What does it mean to lead from your heart? Because I mean, most people, faculty, staff, they work at universities for a reason. So if you're in a leadership position there, you're connected to something really meaningful to you. And I think that people who lead from that place of hope and value are probably making more people-centered decisions than people who are leading from a place of fear and scarcity and, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. It might feel like the sky's falling, but man, if you make your decisions from that place, that whole atmosphere just permeates the institution. And I see it all the time. Like, you can tell when fear is at the helm, people are disengaged, they're fearful and anxious, and it just creates this hideous spiral.
Mm. Jennifer, if anyone wanted to learn more about you, get in touch with you, how can they do it?
I would love that. My website is jenniferaskey.com, Askey. It's how you spell my last name. I'm on LinkedIn. And those are the two places to best find me. And I do one-on-one coaching, and I do like group and team coaching, retreats, facilitation, all that stuff. Because I believe in the mission of higher education. I believe that being a faculty member or a staff member at a university should be like the best job in the world. And I think we can make choices on individual and institutional levels to make that the case.
Jennifer Askey is an academic leadership coach. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me on I Want to Work There.
Eddie, it has been my absolute pleasure.
I Want to Work There is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Mallory Wilsey, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbles, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.